point. That's all I have.
And I have a question.
Yes.
What was it about the duck-billed platypus that just sent you over the edge?
Well,
His outtakes at the end of the video.
what sent me over the edge was, I guess I like insults that are slicing, but you have to understand the insult. Paragraph 63. The shadow, the syzygy, and the self are psychic factors of which an adequate picture can be formed only on the basis of a fairly thorough experience of them. Just as these concepts arose out of an experience of reality, so they can be elucidated only by further experience. Philosophical criticism will find everything to object to in them unless it begins by recognizing that they are concerned with facts and that the concept is simply an abbreviated description or definition of these facts. Such criticism has as little effect on the object as zoological criticism on a duck-billed platypus. It is not the concept that matters. The concept is only a word, a counter, and it has meaning and use only because it stands for a certain sum of experience. Unfortunately, I cannot pass on this experience to my public. I have tried in a number of publications, with the help of case material, to present the nature of these experiences and also the method of obtaining them. Whenever my methods were really applied, the facts I give have been confirmed. One could see the moons of Jupiter even in Galileo's day if one took the trouble to use his telescope. Okay. Philosophical criticism will find everything to object to unless it begins by recognizing that they are concerned with facts and that the concept is simply an abbreviated description or definition of these facts. Such criticism has as little effect on the object as zoological criticism on a duck-billed platypus. Such criticism has as little effect on the object as zoological criticism on a duck. Such criticism has as little effect on the object as zoological criticism on a duck-billed platypus. Whenever my methods were really applied, the facts I give have been confirmed. One could see the moons of Jupiter even in Galileo's day if one took the trouble to use his telescope. And so you have to appreciate who Dr. Jung was. He was somebody who was overturning conventional wisdom of the university and of religious, and indeed, I mean, Thomas Arzt is doing it here too. Let me just see if I can find it quickly. But the point is that that one, I like dry humor anyway, and so this was Dr. Jung's dry humor, which was incredibly insulting. Okay, so here's Thomas Arzt. One approaches the psychological, religious, spiritual, and metaphysical realms of life that are generally thought of as off limits by today's postmodern academic establishment. Nothing causes greater tedium and disregards the central questions of our time more than the ignorance and prevailing bustle witnessed within the self-referential and detail-obsessed chairs of our university institutions. In all likelihood, nothing revelatory will come from their discourse. sort of sums it up. Yeah.
Well,
They
actually,
hire their mirror image.
they do the exact opposite sometimes. They tear things down that were part of their university that was valuable. I saw that at the Lane Fox Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford.
Where
They
what?
completely denuded what the guy was all about, where he was talking about the evolution of human artifacts, technology, and Fox Rivers had everything in an evolutionary sequence, and it became politically incorrect because it was thought that, and it was, I mean, this is a valid criticism, but it had nothing to do with the fact that the guy went to all these pains. But the criticism was that the British were superior to these primitive cultures. But I don't think Fox Rivers was really doing that. He had these beautiful collections in evolutionary sequence in hundreds and hundreds of different areas, like coins and weapons and shields and this and that and the other thing. And the directors of the university just tore it all apart, and now it's just stuff that's out there, and just
No
kind of,
context.
they're just no context. It's just, here's a collection of shields. Here's a collection of. They didn't have the coins. The coins weren't even there.
Huh.
And I was appalled because I went there to see that. You know.
And how did you learn about it?
Well, I read a book. I read his book back in college days.
Okay, so it was Fox Rivers,
General Lane Fox Pitt Rivers.
General Lane Fox
And
Pitt Rivers.
He was in the British Army, and he had been around the world, and he collected all these things, and he was showing how human artifacts, evolve independent of their creators.
Right.
So there's a pattern that develops, and the quintessential example in our country would be the 1960 Chevy, I think it is, with the tail.
Oh yeah.
It comes out like this.
Sure.
That evolved from the single V in the V8. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger over the years until it took over the entire tail.
Those flat down thing,
Right.
with the three lights
Yeah.
on it.
Right.
But the designers didn't know what they were doing. It just happened.
Yeah, it just evolved.
And this can evolve over 1,000, hundreds and hundreds of years.
Surely. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously Dr. Jung is evolving. Here we are 100 years after his initial visions, and we're still
So I wonder when he
talking.
said 600 years.
Well, I mean, the thing that I want.
Is
Well,
that 500
It was
now?
in the Red Book, right?
No, he said it in a conversation with Max Weber. Well, I'm sorry, with Max Zeller. He said it in a conversation with Max Zeller. But, Bill, what I wondered was, in keeping with what happened with the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, where they said it was going to take 300 years, and now it's going to be built in less than 50, let's say. Because I don't know when it started. I know that in 1980, I went there and there were construction.
Yeah, because of technology, the 600 years might not be accurate anymore.
That's right.
Technology, right? Everything. It's so
Yeah.
fast-paced now.
Because Dr. Jung didn't know anything really probably about computers. He may have heard of a UNIVAC or something
They
like
hadn't
that.
talked about AI or any of that, which is
Right.
where the machines
Yeah, because he died in 61.
internalize their own.
Yeah, and so not only did he not know anything about computers, he didn't know anything about social networking and everything. And if I look at what's happened just in the last 15 years, oh my God.
We can have real-time conversations with people on the other side of the planet.
Yeah, and and the thing was, I was in my reserve meetings in Tokyo in 1983, and one of my fellow reservists said, well, if you get a computer and you get on the internet, you can meet girls on these email networks. Okay, and so
That's why tech became so male
right.
dominated.
Right. No, but so, I was Anima driven, I admit it, and I didn't know I was unhappy in my marriage, but I obviously was. I immediately went out and bought myself a PC, and it was a double disk drive, double floppy disk
I've
drive
had one of those, yeah.
PC that in Japan I had to hook it up to 300 baud, which meant 300 kilobits per, no, 300 bits per second. 300 baud was 300 bits per second, and so you stuck your telephone in it.
Flipping the floppies back.
Right.
I
And
remember that.
and so I was user number 16, number 16 on the Japanese internet connection to the US.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I was in Japan. I was the 16th user, and I had to go down to Nippon Telephone Telegraph to get this account started, which I did. Okay, and then I could connect to the source, which was this precursor of CompuServe. And within 2 years, I had met my current wife online, 10 years before the World Wide Web got rolling as a commercial activity. But there were email things at that time. And so from that, now there are tens of millions of users in Japan, obviously, and hundreds of millions, billions of users around the world. And so, that's only a little more
Yeah.
than 30 years, 35 years.
Yeah.
And
It hasn't been that long since we had the struggle with all
and
that.
so I once wrote an article called Culture Pot Full of Holes, because we have all these culture pots that, are structures, which we've been talking about on postmodernity, that have been destroyed, and they're being destroyed faster and faster and faster. I mean, I remember thinking when I heard that Saudi Arabia had opened up the internet to women, I said to myself, oh my God, Saudi Arabia is not going to be the same anymore. It's the old World War I marching song, how are you going to keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris?
Well, I guess they figure they gotta come into the modern era.
There goes, yeah.
Yeah.
By
These are the
title
color,
later.
you can
Oh,
take the
thank you.
color from there.
Okay, terrific. That'd be great.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna stay on the floor.
Okay, so it's been a wonderful year, everyone, and I hope you'll come back on the 8th of January.
What are we working on when we come back? It's in,
Well,
we're starting on?
that's a fair question, but
Answer to Job, part 18.
Yeah, there we go.
no.
They're doing
I'd like to do at least the first 4 chapters of Aion. Okay, because the
Oh,
first
that's my Christmas present coming.
okay the first 4 chapters of Aion are
It's just a
the ego,
annotated red book, isn't it?
huh?
It's the annotated red book.
Well, it's Jung's commentary on the Red Book, okay? And so basically it's Jung describing the key archetypes of the psyche. And so the first chapter is the ego, then the shadow, then the Syzygy, which is Anima, Animus, and the 4th chapter is the self. And so maybe if we start with the ego, I mean, do 1 chapter a week or something, we could. I've started to read it, so you don't have to physically read it. You can read both Jung's book plus Edinger's commentary in the videos on the YouTube channel. So you don't even have to buy the book. You can
I was
just.
getting ready to read that again.
So let's do that. Is that agreed?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, chapter 1 of Aion on January 8th. Unfortunately, as already said, the fact that metaphysical ideas exist and are believed in does nothing to prove the actual existence of their content or of the object they refer to, although the coincidence of idea and reality in the form of a special psychic state, a state of grace, should not be deemed impossible, even if the subject cannot bring it about by an act of will. Once metaphysical ideas have lost their capacity to recall and evoke the original experience, they have not only become useless, but proved to be actual impediments on the road to wider development. One clings to the possessions that have once meant wealth, and the more ineffective, incomprehensible, and lifeless they become, the more obstinately people cling to them. Naturally, it is only sterile ideas that they cling to. Living ideas are content and riches enough, so there is no need to cling to them. Thus, in the course of time, the meaningful turns into the meaningless. This is unfortunately the fate of metaphysical ideas. Paragraph 66. Today it is a real problem what on earth such ideas can mean. The world, so far as it has not completely turned its back on tradition, has long stopped wanting to hear a message. It would rather be told what the message means. The words that resound from the pulpit are incomprehensible and cry for an explanation. How has the death of Christ brought us redemption when no one feels redeemed? In what way is Jesus a God-man, and what is such a being? What is the Trinity about, and the parthenogenesis, the eating of the body and the drinking of the blood, and all the rest of it? What connection can there be between the world of such concepts and the everyday world, whose material reality is the concern of natural science on the widest possible scale? At least 16 hours out of 24 we live exclusively in this everyday world, and the remaining 8 we spend preferably in an unconscious condition. Where and when does anything take place to remind us even remotely of phenomena like angels, miraculous feedings, beatitudes, the resurrection of the dead, etc.? It was therefore something of a discovery to find that during the unconscious state of sleep, intervals occur called dreams, which occasionally contain scenes having a not inconsiderable resemblance to the motifs of mythology. For myths are miracle tales and treat of all those things which very often are also objects of belief. Paragraph 67. In the everyday world of consciousness, such things hardly exist. That is to say, until 1933, only lunatics would have been found in possession of living fragments of mythology. After this date, the world of heroes and monsters spread like a devastating fire over whole nations, proving that the strange world of mythology had suffered no loss of vitality during the centuries of reason and enlightenment. If metaphysical ideas no longer have such a fascinating effect as before, this is certainly not due to any lack of primitivity in the European psyche, but simply and solely to the fact that the erstwhile symbols no longer express what is now welling up from the unconscious as the end result of the development of Christian consciousness through the centuries. This end result is a true antimimon pneuma, a false spirit of arrogance, hysteria, woolly-mindedness, criminal amorality, and doctrinaire fanaticism, a purveyor of shoddy spiritual goods, spurious art, philosophical stutterings, and utopian humbug, fit only to be fed wholesale to the mass man of today. That is what the post-Christian spirit looks like. Okay.